The decision by Turkey's top judicial body to remove from office 2 judges who were later detained and arrested after they had ruled to release a jailed journalist and 63 police officers exposes a long trail of rulings eroding judicial impartiality and violating the rule of law. On Thursday, on the request of the Supreme Board of Judges and Prosecutors, HSYK, the Bakırköy Second High Criminal Court in Istanbul ordered the detention of judges Mustafa Başer and Metin Özcelik, who were referred to the court late on Thursday. Özcelik was arrested hours after his referral to the court, while Başer, who was not in Istanbul at the time, returned and was arrested on Friday evening. On his way back to Istanbul, Başer had said he felt his end would be similar to that of his colleague as he criticized Özcelik's arrest, writing on his Twitter account, "They will probably arrest me as well. I am going to the courthouse with this in mind. Can a person who is expected to flee the country do this?" he said, adding, "It is the conscience of the Turkish nation that was arrested, not a judge." The 2 judges had ordered the release of journalist Hidayet Karaka and 63 police officers who had been kept in pre-trial detention for months. The judges had previously been dismissed from their posts after the second chamber of the HSYK convened on Monday morning for a meeting regarding an ex officio investigation into Judge Özcelik from the Istanbul 29th Court of First Instance and Judge Başer, who worked for the Istanbul 32nd Court of First Instance. Upon ending the meeting on Monday afternoon, the HSYK board ruled to discharge both judges from their posts. Karaka was detained as part of a major media crackdown on December 14, 2014, while the imprisoned police officers were detained in operations that started on July 22, 2014 on charges of spying and illegal wiretapping in 2 separate probes. The officers were later arrested. Erdoğan's HSYK legislation rolls back gains of 2010. The HSYK, the highest disciplinary body of the legal system in Turkey, underwent considerable changes in 2010 as part of the proposed amendments to the Turkish constitution. When the proposed amendments did not receive the necessary 367 parliamentary votes but did receive the support of the 3/5 of parliament, they were taken to a referendum and accepted with a 58% yes vote. In February 2014, urged by the immense scale of 2 graft investigations in December 2013 incriminating some of his cabinet ministers, bureaucrats, and even some of his family members, then Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdoğan pushed for legislation to change the structure of the HSYK, eliciting immense criticism from legal experts and political opposition. Erdoğan's push for the new legislation, which would roll back gains from the 2010 referendum, allowed the General Council of the HSYK to be able to convene and make decisions with the attendance of 12 members. In addition, judges and prosecutors are now required to have 20 years of experience as a prerequisite for HSYK membership, so young judges and prosecutors are prevented from becoming members of the board. According to the HSYK law, the topics discussed by the HSYK during board meetings are selected by the Justice Minister, currently Bekir Bozdağ. The minister also decides whether to allow the board to discuss matters that do not directly concern the HSYK during its meetings. In addition, judges and prosecutors have to seek permission from the Justice Minister if they intend to travel abroad for purposes such as training and attending courses. Erdoğan's changes elicit criticism from legal experts. The law did, however, receive immense criticism from legal experts. Professor Bülent Siskli, a former HSYK member who had been appointed to the board by former President Abdullah Gül, told Today's Zaman in February 2014 that if the law was approved by then President Gül, Turkey would bid farewell to the separation of powers and the rule of law. Underlining that the law gives special authorities to the Justice Minister and thus members of the board will become civil servants of the minister rather than independent jurists, Siskli said in February 2014, the new law is against the Turkish constitution and EU norms. Furthermore, it represents a regression from our standards of the rule of law and spells an end to law and justice in the country. Even Hans Swoboda, a deputy in the European Parliament and the leader of the Progressive Alliance of Socialists and Democrats, (SND) group, said in January 2014 before the law was approved by Gül that if the HSYK bill was to become law, it would affect Turkish-EU relations. HSYK elections in October cement Erdoğan's rule over judiciary. The HSYK elections on October 12, 2014 saw the ranks of Turkey's top judiciary body become filled with government-backed members of the judiciary, amid concern from judicial groups regarding the fairness and impartiality of the elections. Advocacy groups for members of the judiciary such as the Judges and Prosecutors Association, YARSAV, and the Judges Union appealed to the Supreme Election Board, YSK, in September 2014 for the HSYK election to be held in a free and impartial manner. The final result of the election meant that Erdoğan and his associates were now free to implement the law as they saw fit. After the change in legislation and the victory of members of the judiciary close to the government in the HSYK elections, Turkey faced a flurry of decisions that fly in the face of the rule of law and judicial impartiality. One example of this is the arbitrary reassignment of more than 2,000 judges and prosecutors after a massive corruption scandal went public on December 17, 2013, and the politically motivated investigations opened against prosecutors who annoy Erdoğan and members of the government. The corruption probes incriminated 4 former cabinet ministers, their families, prominent businesspeople, and high-ranking bureaucrats, and some of then Prime Minister Erdoğan's family members on charges of bribery and transferring gold to Iran in order to undermine a US-led sanction against the country. HSYK opens investigations into prosecutors presiding over graft case. The 4 prosecutors who initially conducted the corruption investigations Celal Kara, Zekeriya Ounce, Muammer Akaz and Mehmet Yücek were suspended by the HSYK in December 2014 in what is seen as the final episode of a series of efforts by the government to stifle the investigations that shook the country. The files of Kara, Ounce, Akaz and Yücek were referred to the second chamber of the top judicial body with a demand for their suspension earlier this month. All 4 prosecutors are accused of malpractice. They will remain suspended until the investigation is completed. In March 2015, the HSYK cleared the way to investigate Kara and Akaz and also Judge Süleyman Karakol, who presided over the corruption investigation. Public prosecutors Zekeriya Ounce, Kara and Akaz were previously suspended due to an internal investigation against them. The HSYK concluded on Tuesday that Kara had issued an asset freeze on suspects without undertaking a sufficient investigation and had inappropriately ordered that the son of ex-minister Muammer Gülen and Iranian businessman Reza Zarrab be wiretapped. Akaz is accused of misconduct, ordering illegal wiretaps, violating the confidentiality of the investigation and distributing leaflets in front of a courthouse. Kara faces similar charges. The prosecutors had previously been suspended from their posts on charges of harming the judiciary's dignity because of the graft investigation they carried out. Karakol, in light of evidence submitted by the prosecutor, was also accused of freezing the suspect's assets despite a lack of evidence and was suspended until the investigation into the matter is complete. HSYK also investigates former Ergenekon judge. The HSYK also allowed for an investigation into Hüsnü Kamuk, a former judge in the historic Ergenekon trial, over claims that he deleted data on computers at the Istanbul courthouse after he was reassigned. On December 30, 2014, the third chamber of the HSYK tasked inspectors to investigate allegations that Kamuk deleted data from 40 separate computers at the Istanbul courthouse after being reassigned to Kocaeli in an HSYK decision. Kamuk was one of the judges in the main trial of the Ergenekon coup plot case. In August 2013, an Istanbul court sentenced a former chief of general staff to life in prison and handed down harsh sentences to nearly 300 defendants, including many former military force commanders accused of plotting to topple the government. Prosecutors investigating claims of weapons transported to Syria suspended. In another case of politically motivated investigations into members of the judiciary, former Adana public prosecutor Özcan Sisman, known for ordering the search and seizure of National Intelligence Organization, MIT, trucks in January 2014 after suspecting them of carrying weapons to Syria, had his request for documentation relating to the case rejected last week by the HSYK on the grounds of confidentiality, effectively denying Sisman, who was called into court to testify on what had happened. During the seizure of the trucks, the knowledge of what he is being charged with. On January 1, 2014, a mysterious truck with an alleged cargo of arms and humanitarian aid, en route to Syria and escorted by Turkish intelligence officers, was stopped by police between the provinces of Adana and Hatay. The local governor ordered security forces to stop executing a search warrant ordered by prosecutors. Sisman was among the prosecutors suspended by the HSYK on January 15 for investigating claims that the Turkish intelligence agency had illegally shipped arms to opposition groups in Syria. HSYK forgets to appoint judges. In another blunder, the HSYK forgot to appoint judges to the first and second civil courts of peace in Istanbul's Kuşadası district after many judges in the regional civil and administrative courts were reassigned by the HSYK on February 5. The two vacancies in Kuşadası were first noticed by the Bakırköy Justice Commission in charge of the Kuşadası district after a statement from the HSYK on February 5. The commission then appointed temporary judges to the courts until permanent judges were appointed by the HSYK. The temporary judges have since adjourned all of their cases, increasing the number of cases waiting to be heard in the two courts. HSYK orders investigation in judge presiding over Cosmic Room probe. In March 2015, the HSYK launched an inquiry into a public prosecutor and a judge who oversaw an investigation into the Cosmic Room of the General Staff's Special Forces Command, where confidential state and military documents are kept. The investigation began in 2009 after the capture of two officers, Colonel Brahim G. and Maj. Erkan B., from the Tactical Mobilization Group, a unit of the Special Forces Command, while they were observing the house of Deputy Prime Minister Bülent Arın in Ankara's Kukurambar neighborhood. In December 2009, Ankara 11th High Criminal Court Judge Kadir Kayan ordered a search of the room where secret documents of the General Staff are kept. Kayan personally read the documents confiscated in the search and took notes regarding their content. After the completion of the investigation, Kayan sent his report to Mustafa Bilgilay, the prosecutor in charge of the investigation. However, in mid-March the Ankara Public Prosecutor's Office decided not to continue with the 5-year investigation. The HSYK's move to launch an inquiry into Bilgilay and Judge Kayan came just after the decision of the Ankara Public Prosecutor's Office to drop the investigation. HSYK reassigns same judge 5 times. Bahadır Aras, a judge in the Criminal Court of Peace, revealed in mid-April on adalet.org, a website used by the judicial community to exchange thoughts on their profession, that he has been arbitrarily reassigned by the HSYK to different positions in courts in the western province of Özcelik 5 times in the last year. Aras was initially assigned to the Supreme Court of Appeals, Yargıtay, and then transferred in March 2014 to a criminal court of peace in the province of Özcelik. He was reassigned only a month later to the Özcelik Second High Criminal Court. In February, Aras was again transferred, this time to the Özcelik Second Criminal Courts of Peace. Absurdly, only 1 month later, he was reassigned to the Özcelik Second Civil Court of First Instance. The fact that judges and prosecutors are being reassigned to different positions this frequently is clear proof of harassment. The HSYK has virtually launched a battle against those who are known for their critical stances. Those reassignments suffer from a lack of legal background, Aras wrote on the website.